I would say this, that the Biden family were a tremendously good investment for the Communist Chinese Party. A tremendously good investment. And as long as this man is ensconced in the Oval Office, he's not going to permit he or his family to be investigated by his Department of Justice. He's just not going to do it. CNN has no ratings, period. And it's getting worse. They're going from no ratings to negative ratings, which means even the people who work at CNN aren't watching CNN. Anyway, Gordon Chang's there with Fake Tapper, and he's talking about, well, we were at peace for decades with these two countries, but not anymore. Go.
Let's bring in Gordon Chang. He's an analyst on China and North Korea. Gordon, good to see you. You've said that you think Russia could possibly also be involved with these objects. You tweeted last night, quote, "We will be in the fight soon. China and Russia, which are driving events, are making sure of that. We're at the end of decades of general peace," unquote. Okay, that's a terrifying proposition. We still don't know what those other three objects were, and there's a chance we might never know. Do you really think that this could kick off nonstop conflict, if not World War III?
That's a possibility, Jake. Remember, the objects that were shot down on Friday and Saturday entered North American airspace from the north. And that means that they probably passed over Russia. That means perhaps Russia, these are Russian objects. Maybe China launched them from Russia.
And let me stop, and let me add that that Russia's most sophisticated bomber, and it's a serious bomber, was chased away from Alaskan airspace, and that is U.S. airspace, just 48 hours ago by our fighter jets. So Russia's testing us too. And that was just 48 hours ago. Their most advanced bomber came close to, right next to or into our airspace along the coast of Alaska, and again, had to be chased off by our fighter jets. Now just think about all this. These governments have no fear of this administration, none whatsoever. The only people who fear this administration are conservatives and Republicans and people who aren't radical left-wingers. We appear to have the most to fear from this administration. But the enemies, no. Go.
From China, but they floated over Russia, which means that Russia presumably gave approval to that. We know that China's top diplomat is going to be in Moscow in a couple days. That follows by a couple weeks. The vice foreign minister went to Moscow. Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, is supposed to go to Moscow this year. And we've seen China be all in on the Russian war effort in Ukraine. So the conclusion is that China and Russia are forming a durable partnership.
It's more than that. China is building a durable partnership with Iran. The head Islamo-Nazi of Iran just met with Xi. China is building a durable relationship with Saudi Arabia because Biden has all but destroyed that relationship. Biden is now trashing Israel for building 10,000 homes. They call them settlements in their own indigenous properties in the areas where they're free to do so. So the Biden administration is causing havoc with our allies and our enemies. Go ahead.
Do you think they're just provocative? They're just trying to needle us? Do you think they're surveillance? Do you think they're potentially weapons?
Yeah, we don't know. Apparently they were smaller so that they might be less dangerous than the balloon that entered into the U.S. airspace on January 28th from the south, which was Chinese. We don't know. And as you heard from those senators who attended a briefing, I don't think the administration knows either. But one thing, I think President Biden needs to address the American public, even if we don't know. And the American people need to hear it from our leader. You know, Canada's Justin Trudeau spoke to Canada about the object that was over their country. President Biden needs to do the same thing.
I want to get your take on how the U.S. is handling this in terms of communication with the Chinese leaders. Obviously, Secretary of State Blinken canceled his trip to China after that first Chinese spy balloon. We're told that the Ministry of Defense in China has not taken calls from Secretary of Defense Austin or other attempts at outreach. And the State Department spokesman Ned Price said yesterday the U.S. believes in keeping lines of communication open with China. How should the Biden administration be addressing this when it comes to communication with China?
I don't think we should be talking to China. China right now is not in a position to deal with the United States in good faith. And so I don't see why we should be communicating with them. You know, it's an article of faith among American foreign policymakers for decades that you talk to an adversary, you talk to an enemy. But the problem is, by doing that, we've emboldened the worst elements in the Chinese political system by showing that belligerent acts are able to get the United States to a position where we look like we're desperately trying to pursue China. And, you know, we heard President Biden in that conversation with Judy Woodruff of PBS say, well, this incident, this spy balloon incident, is not going to change U.S.-China relations. Well, essentially, that was telling China.
Well, he said more than that. He said it wasn't a big deal. They didn't get any information. It's not a big deal. And of course, the communist Chinese said, man, we've got this guy over a fence. It's unbelievable. And Gordon's 100% right. As a matter of fact, if Biden were any kind of a leader, he would speak to the American people. He would say we have a huge problem on our hands, that we are behind the curve in terms of preparing for our own defense, and that I'm immediately proposing an addendum to the budget to increase defense spending by a certain percentage. Without getting technically specific in the weeds, he can talk about generally where he's going to do that, how he's going to do that. But when you have a man who is now ideologically committed to the kind of foreign policy Joe Biden has really always been committed to, which is weakness. And when you have a man who's committed to really altering the nature of the United States, not defending the United States, and you see that on the border, we have a hell of a problem, America. Go ahead.
No cost for what was obviously a very dangerous act. So we need to have a new way of doing things with China. Our policies, yes, they sound good to the ear, but they produce disastrous results over the course of decades.
Gordon's outstanding. Michael Pillsbury's been outstanding on this subject too. Two people that we in the future will have on as well. But he's exactly right. When the other side is being aggressive, when the other side is violating your airspace, then lying about it, when the other side is building up its military in order to defeat you economically and militarily, you don't keep reaching out and beg them for attention. We're the United States of America. You know, we used to be the #1 superpower in the world. The left never seemed to care about this for reasons that are absolutely inexplicable. But that said, what are we going to do when China attacks Taiwan? We're not going to be able to arm Taiwan the way we've been arming Ukraine, because Ukraine, you can get equipment and munitions to Ukraine through Poland and through other countries right on the border there. Taiwan is the island of Formosa. That's what it used to be called. The Chinese are going to have all their ground-to-air missiles aiming right in the sky. They're going to have that island surrounded. They now have the biggest navy on the face of the earth. It's larger than ours. They have God knows how many people. Their armed forces in terms of their infantry is about twice the size of ours. And we're going to be in an extremely difficult position. They've also militarized those phony islands. And Australia sees it, Japan sees it, South Korea sees it, the Philippines see it, Vietnam even sees it and is concerned about it. Taiwan bought $19 billion worth of military equipment from us. Joe Biden still hasn't delivered it to them. So I would say this, that the Biden family were a tremendously good investment for the Communist Chinese Party. A tremendously good investment. And as long as this man is ensconced in the Oval Office, he's not going to permit he or his family to be investigated by his Department of Justice. He's just not going to do it. And the media aren't going to pressure him either. They're too busy trying to get Trump in prison and smear Ron DeSantis.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.